In this video series, you will learn how to use ZenCart to set up an e-commerce site. Now before you start, you're going to need to have your own domain name to put your store on. So you should already be thinking about what your store is going to be about, and then pick an appropriate domain name. Domain name is your www address that people find your store with. And with a domain name, you need a hosting account that holds your files. Now to get a domain name and hosting account is very simple. You can go to a domain register such as GoDaddy or Namecheap, and then you can register your domain. Okay, so for instance, this is GoDaddy. All you would do is go to search for a domain name here, and then you could type in an ID you have, say my comic book store or something like that, whatever your store is for, and it'll do a search for you and see if it's available. And you can see here it isn't. Gives you some alternatives down here though, so you can use one of these, or you can keep on searching. And once you find one, all you have to do is go through the registration process here. I'm not going to show you how to register a domain or anything. It's very simple. You just pick the domain, you go through and pay for it, and you can get hosting as you go right through here if you want. I've also given you a suggestion for hosting in the resources document. Okay, so that's a quick overview of that. So let's go back to ZenCart here. Now what you want to do is install ZenCart on your hosting account. So of course the first thing you're going to need to do is go to zencart.com, and then you're going to want to download the most recent version. Okay, so right here it says download ZenCart. Go to download now. Okay, so we'll download the zip file here. And I'm just going to download it to a folder I created called ZenCart, just to keep my work files in one spot. Okay, so now we have that downloaded. Okay, so now we have that file here. So what we're going to do now is unzip it. You can just go into, do a right click and extract all. And we'll wait for that to extract. Okay, so now we've unzipped it and all the files are inside this directory. Okay, so what we're going to do now is upload these to our hosting account. Now to do that you need an FTP client, and I like to use one called FileZilla. You can do a search in Google for FileZilla and you can download it and install it. Here's what FileZilla looks like here. Let me just open it up. Okay, so on the left side, this is where you navigate to the files you want to upload. And then on the right side, this is where your server files appear. So to get to your server, you got to type in your host here, which is your domain name, and the username and password for your hosting account, and that will get you hooked up. There's also something called a site manager where you can input your information into the site manager, and then you can hook up to it easily just by going into your site manager entries. Okay, so I just connected up to one of my hosting accounts. Now it depends how you want your store to work. If you want your store to come up soon as somebody types in the domain name, for instance if your domain name was mystore.com, if you want your site to come up when mystore.com is typed in, you would upload things right into the directory that your hosting account said you need to. Usually it's public_HTML or htdocs. This is an add-on domain, so it's going right in the slash directory. You need to know where you're uploading them, in other words. Usually if you're using HostGator, it's going to be under public_HTML. So you just need to find out where they need to be. Okay, so that's all you need to do is upload them there. Now if you want it in a subdirectory, for instance mysite.com/store, what you do is create a directory in here called store, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make mine like this, and then you would go into the directory store. There we are. and I'm going to upload all of these files into there. So I'm just going to click on the first one here, and then I'm going to hit Control and A to select everything. Then I'm going to right click and upload. Okay, that is now uploading everything into the store directory that I created within my domain name. Now while it's doing this, we need to go and set up a database. Zencart is database driven. All the stuff is stored in a database for easy retrieval, and so that you can set everything up and it saves it. Okay, so to do that, you need to log into your control panel. Depends on which hosting you use as to what your control panel will look like. I'm using a normal cPanel hosting, so we're going to go into there. Okay, so I'm now into my control panel. What I want to do now is roll down until I find databases. Okay, here's databases here. What I'm going to do is use the MySQL database wizard. Okay, now all we have to do is give it a database name we want to use. So I'm just going to call it store. Do next step. Now we need to give it a username and password. I'll use store again. And then a password. You want a secure password, so I suggest using the password generator here. And then copy this. And then say that I have copied the password to a safe place. Use password. And create user. Here you want to give it all privileges. And then click next step. And there we go. We now have our database set up. Now I'm going to open a notepad session. And I'm going to put password here just to save this. And this is the password that was generated for us. And then on this page, we can go get our database and username. And they're both the same here. You got to take this whole string. I made them the same, so they're both the same. But if you made them different, you need to know what they are. Okay, so we have this information saved for when we need it. Let's go back and look at our progress of our uploads. It's still going here, so we're going to have to wait till this finishes. Okay, so you wait till it's finished. Now look down here, make sure you don't have any failed transfers. As you see, I have one here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to reset and re-upload. And then let's process the queue. And now it's uploaded. So we got everything uploaded there, and we're ready for the next step. Now what we need to do is change some permissions on some files and directories. To do that, we can use the FTP client right here, but we need to know what we need to change. And to do that, you can go back to your install file here. If we go back to our directory where our files are, there's one called docs here, and then there's one called readme installation.html. If you double click on that, you can find the files that you need to change your permissions for in here. Now let's roll down. Now when you get down here, it says creating the configure.php file, and inside the catalog includes dist configure.php. You need to rename that file. So let's go back to FileZilla. Okay, so we're going to go and go to includes, and then in here there's our dist configure.php. So we're going to rename that. Get the dist off the front. So we now have configure.php. Now we need to change the permission, as I said here, to 777. Read, write, execute for all. So we'll go back here. What we do is go to File Attributes, and then we just make sure that they are all clicked. or you can just set 777 inside here. And we've now created this configure file, and we have also changed the permission. Okay, so then we go back and we just continue following the instructions on here. Okay, now here we have another one, admin includes and dist configure.php. We need to do the same thing to that, so we need to go back to FileZilla, and then we're going to go up one here. We're going to go to admin includes, and then we're going to go find distadmin.php or distconfigure.php, rename. So we'll get rid of the dist off the front here. And then we're going to set it to 777. We can just do it here. Okay, and then back we go again. And we continue looking through it and see if we need to change anything else. Now you see down here we have some folder permissions we need to set. Okay, now I should just explain this catalog in front here is referring to the install directory. In their example, they use the directory catalog, whereas we use store. Okay, so we need to change permissions to 777 for these directories. So cache, images. So let's go to those first. We need to go up a level here. So cache 777. Images 777. And then includes languages, English, HTML includes. So let's go to languages, or includes. Oops. Okay, so includes languages, English, and HTML includes. Okay, so right click on that one. 777. Next we have media and pub. So 777 pub 777 and then admin backups, admin images and graphs. Okay, so back to admin backups. And then graphs here inside images. Okay, now also with images, it says to set all of the subdirectories and their subdirectory to 777. Now, an easy way to do that is to go back here. We're going to go back to images here. We're going to right click and go to file attributes. Then you'll see here recursive or recurse into subdirectories. Apply to files and directories, apply to directories only is what we want here. Click 777 and that will go through and it will change the permissions of the directories for us without us having to go through the whole thing. Okay, so it's doing that for us without us having to take the time to go searching through all the directories. Okay, now at this point we can run the installer, and all we have to do is type in the location to our store. So in my case it's my domain name /store. So I've installed this on a domain called thebestinfoon.info. So it will be thebestinfoon.info/store. So I'm going to type that in the URL bar up here. Okay, so it's brought up a page for us here. So we begin the installation. All we have to do is go down here where it says run ZC installer /index.php, and it brings us up here. Okay, so you can read through this. Let's click continue. This is the GNU license. Continue. Now, it gives you the analysis of your server to make sure that you have everything you need in here. Okay, so let's click install. Now, remember that we saved our database information, so we need to put it in here now. Now, the first thing you need to know is your database host. A lot of times this is going to be localhost, but to find it, you can go back to your control panel, then go down to databases and go into phpMyAdmin. Now, if you look up on the top here, it says localhost. So that's going to be your database host name, so use whatever it says up here. So localhost is right in my case. Database username and password and the database name. We saved all that in Notepad, remember. So we used this string as our username and our database name. And then our password. Is here. Okay, down here, a table prefix. Make something random here. So we'll do UYT underscore. Now here we have whether SQL is cacheable or not, or if you want to cache it. I'm going to put it to file. So it's going to go to the cache file as you see down here, and it'll be cached in there. And we already set the file permission for that. Okay, so let's save the database settings. Okay, now this is populated the screen with the values for our site. Make sure they're correct. So these are correct. Down here is HTTPS, or secure values. And whether you want to enable it or not. Now if you don't have an HTTPS certificate, leave it disabled. Okay, and enable SSL on admin area, same thing. If you don't have a certificate, leave it disabled. So we're going to save the system settings. Now here we start setting up our store name. This is just some basic information. So our store name, so whatever you're going to name it here, your name. Put an email in here for your store. Now a good idea is to use your control panel to set up an email address on your domain and put it in here. The country you're in, or your store's in here. Store zone. Okay, so pick whichever you want here. I'm just going to put none here. Here you can give your store address. I'm just going to leave that the way it is for now. Default language and default currency. So pick the proper currency you're using here. Now here you can install the demo data. So it'll set up a store with some demo data in it. Now you can choose yes or no here. I like to choose yes because it gives you some data in the store that you can go in and change. So I'm going to say yes. Okay, here you need to put in your admin username. So I'm just going to say, well, I'll just put admin, but don't use admin. That's not a good idea. I'm just doing it in this case to demonstrate. Okay, and then a password. You need both letters and numbers in here, and it's going to ask us to change it after the first time in. So I'm just going to say password 1 and confirm password 1 and our administrative email here. But this is the one that will be used for testing newsletters and emails. Okay, so just put that in here. And check for ZenCard updates when logging into admin. So that's just self-explanatory. So we'll save the admin settings. Okay, so we're done now. Now, what we need to do next is rename our admin folder. So let's go back to FileZilla. And we're just going to go where it says admin here. We're going to rename and give it a name that isn't easy for somebody to find. We don't want people finding this directory very easily. So we'll do admin-AD, for instance. You can name it whatever you want. Okay, now remember we changed a configuration on config.php and in the includes and in the admin. Okay, so let's go back and we'll go, it's an admin add now. And then we have configure.php down here. There it is. Now we need to reset the permission here. We'll go to File Attributes. Now this one changed itself back already. Remember we set it at 777, but it's now 644. So we don't have to do anything there. But just double check anyways. Now let's go to the other one, which is inside includes. Just click here. And then we'll go to Configure and File Attributes. Now this one was reset to 444 by itself. So if it still says 777, set it to 444. Okay, so those are done. Let's go back to the instruction screen. Okay, now the next thing it's going to want us to do is remove the ZC install folder. So let's go back in here and look for the ZC install folder. And we're going to delete that. Okay, at this point we can go ahead and log into our site. So we go to domain name /store and then we change it to admin-AD. Okay, and now we can log in for the first time. And now we have to change our password. And submit. Okay, and now we have completed the ZenCard install.